I recently made a video about how gun accessories can impact not only your perception of guilt in front of a jury, but the possible sentence as well. In that video, we talked about cases where judges admitted accessories like lasers, silencers, aftermarket triggers to show motive or intent or state of mind for a crime. I mentioned that cosmetic accessories were not as frequently seen as functional accessories like triggers. Although we did talk about the prosecutors who sought to introduce an AR-15 dust cover that said, "You're f***ed" on it. I may have specifically said in that video that I've never found a case about Punisher skull accessories. But some of the viewers out there sent a case my way. I'm embarrassed. Took place in none other than my home state of Florida. And this is a wild one. I would assume 95% of you out there know what the Punisher skull is. You're talking about Frank Castle, Marvel vigilante who goes after criminals and kills them violently. His logo, the distinct white skull. I feel like I have to mention it because in the case that we're talking about today, State of Florida versus Wong, the judge and most of the jury had no clue what the Punisher skull was. God bless him. Funny enough, the trial judge said that he must live in a cocoon, his words, because he didn't know what the Punisher was. Now let's pause for a second. Look at me, guys. While we're talking about the court of law, let's talk about the court of public opinion. Punisher skulls, out. Factually cringe. Maybe they were okay 20 years ago when people didn't know what it was and it was less common, but now people still don't know what it is, and you have your Uncle Cletus with a 3-foot by 2-foot Punisher logo on the Dodge Ram 1500 he's gotten 2 DUIs in, and he thinks the MCU is woke DEI propaganda, and he and your dad used to beat up kids who read comic books in high school. If I see a Punisher skull, I know you're already guilty of never reading a book that didn't have pictures in it, of having a BMI over 30, of thinking a cummerbund is a pastry. Ivan Wong discovered that his wife Mabel had been texting another man. He punched a mirror, he broke his hand, he threw a hammer at a dresser, got pissed off. For some reason, she moved out. 4 days later, Mr. Wong purchases a handgun. If you don't have a concealed handgun permit in Florida, there's a cooling off period. At least there was at the time. 8 days later, Wong goes back to the gun shop, picks up the handgun because now, for sure, he's cooled off. He meets with Mabel one last time to try to reconcile, but he insists, for whatever reason, on looking at her phone, where he sees the text messages between her and this other man. Great idea. He does what any other reasonable man would do. Flip his shit, smash his wife's phone in the street to teach her a lesson, which causes her, of course, to run away. He drives to his house to get his gun, in his words, to scare Mabel into stop texting this other man. Well, for one, she can't text the other guy anymore because you broke her phone. 2, you just admitted that you intended to commit aggravated assault, a very serious felony. Wong calls Mabel's friend Maria, who Mabel's staying with, and asks to speak with Mabel. Wisely, Maria says, not going to happen. And I'm going to call the cops if you come over here. As soon as Maria goes outside to tell her husband and her husband's friend about what happened, Wang's pickup is in the driveway. He jumps out of the car, starts shooting, killing Maria's husband, wounding his friend. Wong drives the truck through Maria's front door and into her house. Mabel's father puts himself between Mabel and the truck, but that goes about as well as you'd think it would, and Wong goes right through him, running over Mabel, killing her. He sees Maria hiding behind her husband's truck, so Wong runs into the truck, trying to kill Maria as well. She escapes with a foot injury. During this demolition derby that homicidal psychopath Wong is putting on in front of Maria's front yard, he's repeatedly running over her husband, Michael, ensuring that if the bullets from the Punisher gun didn't kill him, his 4-wheel F-350 compensation device would. After the incident, Wong's family convinces him to turn himself in, which he does. As you might imagine, Wang's charged and convicted of a shitload of serious felonies, including first-degree murder, which means that the murder was premeditated, as opposed to second-degree murder, which is not premeditated, or manslaughter, which is seen as a killing in the heat of passion or through recklessness. James, what does this fucked up case have to do with Punisher skulls? Glad you asked. I hate to say it's funny, but the legal issue in this case, Wong appealed because his gun was shown to the jury. You guessed it, he had Punisher skull grips. Apparently, before the trial, there was an in-depth hearing as to whether Punisher skull grips should be admitted into evidence. It seemed like there was a gentleman's agreement among the lawyers even at the hearing that if the grips were admitted into evidence, the state wasn't going to dramatize them or call special attention to them. This man thought he was the Punisher, taking bloody retribution out on his wife and her friends. The jury would just see the grips. That's it. I say it's funny because this dude just massacred an entire family and shot 2 people with a handgun he purchased immediately after he separated from his wife. And he thinks he's going to beat murder 1 if the jury doesn't see his Punisher skull grips. That's like a 9/11 hijacker saying he wouldn't have been found guilty if the jury didn't see his New York Jets jersey. I mean, if this is the best you've got for an appeal, give it a whip, see what happens, but most of you can probably tell where this one's going. The Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court pointed out to exclude evidence which had been admitted at trial. Exclusion of the evidence would have changed the outcome of the trial. The Florida Supreme Court reached the same conclusion that the Court of Appeals, the trial court, and literally all of us watching have, and that is, dude, you didn't go to prison because of Punisher skull grips. You went to prison because you killed an entire family over a fight with your wife. To be fair, he was trying to beat the premeditated murder charge, but I don't think the Punisher skull grips did him in. It probably would have been the fact that he bought the gun the day they separated, that he drove to get it before he went to Maria's house, and he got out and started shooting. It's also worth noting that the state waived the death penalty, so this dude wasn't even fighting for his life to beat this premeditated charge. He was going to get life in prison no matter what with his ankles behind his head. Murder 1, murder 2. Dumb case. What's the takeaway for you? You should note that Punisher skull grips were indeed admitted into evidence. You may or may not think that's important, but Mr. Wong's legal team certainly thought it was important enough to have a hearing over their exclusion and to appeal it, while the state fought to make sure that the jury saw the grips. This case ultimately reinforces my conclusion from the accessories as evidence video, and that is, if you have accessories on your gun that you don't want the jury to see, or that you don't want a prosecutor to twist around on you, maybe reconsider those accessories or keeping your sweet-ass Punisher gun for range day only. I know, James is a boomer now. He's telling us not to put certain accessories on our gun because we're going to go to jail. None of this shit matters. Dude, I'm showing you cases where this was actually presented to a jury. If you think it's not important, rock on, do it. All I can say is just don't do anything to your gun that you can't justify in court or that you wouldn't want a jury or a prosecutor to see. That's all I'm saying. You're all adults. Do what adults do. Carry comic book character totems with you if you want, because you want your gun to be different than his gun. I'm James Reeves. I'm not your lawyer. This is not legal advice, but if you want me to be your lawyer, sign up for US Law Shield, at least in Mississippi and Louisiana. Use promo code NGGC. You get a few months of free membership, and my range, Neutral Ground Gun Company, gets $20 or $30, something like that. Thanks as usual for watching. Take care of yourselves out there.